right, so we're going to be starting, and welcome everybody. I will be doing a class today on Purim. First, we want to thank Rachel for always facilitating and making it so beautiful and warm and inviting. And Fifth Avenue Synagogue, it's a joint group of Hineni and Fifth Avenue. So Purim, it's going to be in 2 weeks. So let's get prepared. The word Purim, the name Purim, comes from the word pur. It's a Persian for lottery. Because Haman, when he made his plan, he picked lots, one for the day of the week, one for the month, to the day, the actual day and the month were to start his war against the Jewish people. It was Haman's final solution. His desire, what he wanted, his plan was to wipe out the Jewish nation. He said, Laharo, to kill, La'abe, to wipe out, Lahashmi, to destroy. He wanted to bring an end to the Jewish people. And his plan was to pick a lot, and the day that it will fall on, that's the day of Purim that he'll start his war. So we have to ask, why are we naming it Purim after lots? In fact, the Megillah tells us, Al Kain, because of that, Karu Layomim Ela, they call those days Purim, Al Shem HaPur, because of the lots. It's like calling the holiday Day of Weapons of Mass Destruction. Like, why can't we have a positive name, like Feast of Esther and Mordechai, or Holiday of Great Miracles? Why can't we commemorate it with the positive? Why are we saying Purim, thinking of those lots? Rav Moshe Feinstein did something amazing, that imparts a life message to all of us. What is that? That we could never be too certain, too sure of anything in life. There are no guarantees. Life is like one big lottery. You go to sleep at night and you don't know, sorry, and you don't know what the next day is going to bring. One day, all the Jewish people of Shushan were sitting in the palace of Achashverosh, feasting together, thinking, we made it. We're in the palace of Achashverosh. It's like as if they would be invited to Buckingham Palace, to the White House, and they're saying, we arrived. We're sitting at the table of Achashverosh. And the next thing you knew, Haman had an edict out to destroy the whole Jewish community. As I was thinking about this, I was thinking of where are all our eyes these days on the news, what's new in Ukraine, what's coming out. It wasn't so long ago that the people of Ukraine would go to sleep at night and think they'll get up and the next day will be just like the day before. Any other day, they'll go to work, they'll go to school, they'll do their grocery shopping, they'll go about their business. But then what happened? Overnight, their lives changed. All of a sudden, there's bombing, there's caravans of tanks, their cities are under siege, they're being surrounded. So yes, life is Purim. We can never be too certain. We never know what tomorrow brings. And how should we react to it? We learned from Mordechai. What was Mordechai's first reaction? To go daven, to pray, to reach out to Hashem and connect. And that's not only when things are difficult and painful in times of tragedy, but also connect to Hashem at good times and say, thank you, Hashem. Baruch Hashem, I had a good day. I hope I daven tomorrow will be another good day. To daven and reach out. So that's the first lesson of Purim. Never be too certain, never be too sure. The Megillah, we call it Megillas Esther. Megillah is translated to the word scroll, the scroll of Esther. It comes from the word galgal, a wheel. Because what do we do? What does a wheel do? It turns and turns. Like the Megillah scroll. We roll and we unroll it. But there's a deeper meaning to Megillah. Megillah also comes from the word legalot, to reveal. Esther is similar to the Hebrew word Esther. The story of the Megillah is
Sorry
to
to
reveal
interrupt.
that
Ellen, can everyone please mute? Can everybody please mute who's on Zoom?
If everyone could please mute themselves so we don't have confusing background noise, that would be much appreciated. Thank you. So Megillat Esther means legalot, to reveal. Esther, what was Hester, what was hidden. Because throughout the Megillah, we will not find Hashem's name mentioned one time. The book of Esther is a book of hidden miracles. Unlike the story of Pesach, where everything was out, it was such an obvious miracles, the plagues, the splitting of the sea, those were all very obvious. The story of Purim was the hidden hand of God. And it's up for us to look and study through the Megillah, look for where Hashem was with the Jewish people, look for that hidden hand, not only in the Megillah, but in our lives each and every day, to know the hidden hand of Hashem is guiding us in our lives today. And perhaps that's one of the reasons that on Purim we wear masks and we wear costumes, because the miracle was hidden. It wasn't obvious to the eye. If you would want to look at the story of Purim, you could say it was all coincidental. Coincidental that Esther ended up in the palace of Achashverosh. Coincidental that Esther was able to convince Achashverosh to stop the edict of Haman. But we have to know and understand there's no such a thing as coincidence. The Hebrew word for coincidence is mikra. Mikra could be divided, rearrange the letters into two Hebrew words. We have rak, only, may Hashem, from God. There are no coincidences. Mikra, coincidence, is rak, may Hashem, only from Hashem. So the fact that Esther was taken into the palace from Hashem, not coincidental. So let's, again, I'm going to say like the hidden miracles where we don't see the hand of Hashem. I was thinking this is also the story of Ukraine today, where with the story of Purim, did we understand why the Megillah tells us Batilokach Esther? Esther was taken by force into the palace. She didn't go on her own free will. No, we tend to think of the Purim story with that there was this great big beauty contest, like the Miss America, Miss Persia, right? And Esther went willingly on her own. Oh no, the Megillah tells us Batilokach, she was taken. against her will, taken off the street to the harem of Achashverosh. The Jews at the time, do you think they understood? And still hard to understand. Here's this innocent, beautiful Esther taken against her will into the palace. How do we explain it? How do we understand? It was only later on that we understood that Esther had to be an advocate and a spokesperson for the Jewish nation. So we could be looking at what's going on in Ukraine and we say, we don't get it. We don't understand. Why is Russia doing what they're doing? Why did they get so far? How did this happen? But it's Hashem's hidden hand. And the day will come when all the pieces will fall into place and we will understand why this is happening. The same way we understood only later why Esther ended up in the palace of Achashverosh. Let's continue with the story of Purim. And we said masks, costumes are very much part of Purim. I remember growing up and I would always get dressed up in my mother's old gowns. And she had the lamés and the sequins and the glitzier, and the more glittery, the better. And I loved it. And I had all this costume jewelry on and necklaces upon necklaces. And I remember I used to wear a tiara and I was Queen Esther. Today, everyone wants to be the Disney princess. But I think, why be a Disney princess if you could be our own Queen Esther? As an adult, I understand it differently. It's not the sequins or the glitter, the lamé or the velvet. It's not the costume jewelry that makes a person a royal, but it's the royalty within. And Esther Hamalka, Queen Esther, had that inner royalty, which helped her survive in the palace of Achashverosh. I often think, how did she do it to be taken into the palace? And Achashverosh, I think of him like a Khomeini. And here, she stuck with him in the palace. But she had that inner royalty. And we are all descendants of Esther. We all carry her genes. And we have that inner royalty within us. We just have to bring it out. The potential is there. We are carrying her spiritual genes. The inner royalty is there. We just have to realize it and utilize it. Esther was also known by a second name, Hadassah. The Megillah tells us Hadassah is Esther. They were one person, two names. And we know that there's always a name-soul connection. In fact, the word for soul, neshama, the center two letters of the word is shem, name. And it's surrounded with a nun, for ner, candle, and a hey, for Hashem. The name is the candle of Hashem, the candle of God within each and every person's neshama. There is a name-soul connection. So what's the name-soul connection of Hadassah to Esther's neshama? Hadassah is a myrtle. A myrtle is always green, all year round. It's an evergreen. That was Esther. No matter where she was consistent in her commitment to Torah and mitzvot. She was an evergreen. She was committed to Hashem at home. She was committed in the palace of Achashverosh. In fact, Megillah tells us she had 7 handmaids, Sheva Na'aros. Why 7? Why'd she set herself up to have 7 handmaids? One for each day of the week, so she could keep track on her calendar. When is Shabbos coming? She had her Monday, her Tuesday, her Wednesday, and then she had the woman who came to her on Shabbos. And she knew today is Shabbos. Even in the palace of Achashverosh, Esther had Shabbos. There are many people who have the custom on Purim to eat nuts and seeds, to put it on our table. Why? How did Esther survive in the palace? She stuck to kashrus in the palace of Achashverosh. Her nuts and her seeds gave her energy. So many have that custom on the Purim table when you have your Purim Suda, your Purim meal, to put out some nuts and seeds. Esther had other qualities of Hadassah. It was an evergreen. A myrtle also has a sweet aroma, a sweet scent, the myrtle, but a bitter taste. So Esther knew when to be sweet, when to be kind, when to be giving and charming, and she knew when to be tough. We find that the Megillah tells us about Esther when she was in the harem of Achashverosh, that she was nasat chen l'chol ra'eha. Whoever saw her was charmed by her. She had chen. She had that inner charm. To know her was to love her. She was all sweetness. But when she had to be tough and speak up to Achashverosh to save her nation, she knew to be tough, and she got up and she said, Ish tsar, oyev, Haman hara hazeh. That man Haman, he's an evil guy. He's a Russia. He's Ra. He wants to do bad to me and to my people. So when she had to be sweet, she was sweet, like the sweet aroma of the myrtle. But when she had to be tough, she could be sharp and tough, like the bitter taste of the myrtle. So that was Esther and Hadassah. But Esther, even her own name, means hidden. How she knew and was able to keep her identity hidden in the palace until the time was right, the time was appropriate for her to reveal who she was. And as many times as Achashverosh would tell her, tell me, he would ask, who are you? Where are you from? Esther was quiet and didn't reveal her nation, her place of origin. So she knew, say so, to keep quiet, to stay hidden. How did she survive? In front of the word say so, the name Esther is the letter Aleph. Aleph stands for one, Hashem Echad. Her belief, her emunah, her trust that Hashem is going to be with her all those days in the palace is what enabled her to survive. And just think of it. The Megillah closes and it says, La Yehudim Haisa Ora V'Simcha. To the Jewish nation, there was joy, there was light, there was happiness, there was celebration. Haman was finished and he couldn't do anything to them. And they all went back to their lives. What did Esther do? She stayed. She was still stuck in the palace with Achashverosh. What strength she had to remain. And she and Achashverosh, she had a child, Darius, who later on gave permission for the Jewish people to leave Persia, return to Eretz Yisrael, and rebuild the second temple. She knew that she was staying in the palace because she had a mission in life. And that was her strength. Remember, the Aleph came first in her name. Her source of strength was the one and only Aleph, Echad Hashem. Now we're going back. I'm going to give you from the Megillah a little bit understanding on Esther. And let's ask, how did she survive even in that harem of Achashverosh? It says that she was there and they offered her all different types of creams and makeups and body treatments before she was presented to Achashverosh. How did she survive? When the Megillah mentions her name, at the beginning it says Esther, Esther. As soon as she is taken, you know what her name becomes called? Esther Bas Abichail. Esther, the daughter of Abichail. Ubehagia Tar Esther Bas Abigail. When it became the turn of Esther, the daughter of Abichail, Lo Biksha Davar. She did not request one thing. They offered all these splendid treatments to her. She didn't want one thing. She didn't want to take anything that would make herself more beautiful, more desirable. She stood up strong and she said, I'm not going. If this is the way it's going to be, then that's Yad Hashem, that hidden hand of God. But she wasn't going to do anything to push it. And what gave her the strength? It mentions her father's name, Bas Abichail, the daughter of Abichail. What does Abichail mean, her father's name? Abi, my father. Chayil, a chayal, soldier, strength. My father is my strength. What kept her going? The image of her father. That she remembered her roots. She remembered where she came from. And she felt her father was with her. And she will survive this challenge because she is the daughter of Abichail. Bas Abichail, my father, my strength. What's very interesting is that we know Esther came from the tribe of Benjamin. Benjamin was a son of Rachel. Who was the other son of Rachel of Rachel? Yosef. The lives of Benjamin and Yosef were intertwined. What was by one was by the other. When Yosef was sold and taken into Egypt and was in the house of Potiphar, what enabled him to survive that challenge? What gave him strength? Diyukna shel Abi, the image of his father. The image of Yaakov was before him. And that's what kept him connected to his Torah, to his Judaism, to his God. And generations later, here comes Esther from the tribe of Benjamin, a brother of Yosef, a son of Rachel. And what kept her going? Bas Abichail, a daughter of Abichail, my father, my strength. When Esther first heard of Haman's edict, the Megillah tells us her reaction was batit halal. Halal comes from the word achalil, a flute. What is a flute? It's a windpipe, right? A hollow instrument. Batit halal. She became hollow. She became that empty feeling inside. Sometimes when you hear devastating news, you get this empty feeling inside, like you can't even stand up. You don't have the strength to carry on. You feel so empty inside. That was Esther's initial reaction. Atis halal. She felt empty inside. But then she found her strength. You know, we all have those days where you feel like you can't get out of bed. You just want to stay in bed and pull that cover off over your face and say, I'm staying in bed today. I'm not in the mood of facing whatever there is. I don't want to hear the music today. I'm just staying in bed under the covers. I'm sure Esther had mornings like that. Batis halal. She became hollow. She became empty. But then she remembered her father. She remembered her roots. She had the Aleph in front of her name. She knew Hashem was with her. She turned to Hashem. And instead of saying, Ein li koach, I have no more strength, I can't carry on, she said, Tein li koach, give me strength. I want to be an advocate for my people. Help me stand up. Give me strength to be strong. And she turned to Hashem. Not just did she only turn to Hashem, it's tefillah in prayer, but she asked Mordechai, go, gather, kanos, gather together all the Jewish people. They should all pray for me. They should fast for me, because I'm going to go speak to Achashverosh. But this too reminds me of the situation today, when Mordechai, he gathered together the little children of Shushan, and he davened together with them, because the neshama, the soul of a child, is so pure. A child's prayers are answered. And today, in Uman, the children of Uman gather together to pray and beseech and beg Hashem for safety and for saving, for all good, that everything should be good. The same like by Esther. And as much as you go through the Megillah, you realize it's not just a story for then, but it's a story that's repeated throughout the ages. There's parts of Esther within all of us. We could all identify with different happenings in the Megillah. If you think of it, a history book always has dates and years and times. There are no times, there's no dates written in it, because it's timeless. It's for every generation. It's a message that repeats itself from generation to generation. A message we could all identify with. So Esther got up and she said, I'm going to be strong. I am not going to let this get to me. And here is another reason why perhaps we wear masks on Purim. She masked her inner fears, her inner worries. Just think of it. She knew that Haman was out to kill her people. She knew Achashverosh, who killed Vashti, anything could blow him off, and he could do the same to her. She must have been living with terror, but yet she planned dinner parties for her, Haman, Achashverosh. She wore a mask on her face. She put a smile on her face, even when she was living with fear and worries. That was the strength of Esther, and that's the strength that each of us have today. Also understood the power of speech. understood that there's a time to be silent and there's a time to be strong. She understood that a secret is a secret. Now, how many times do we hear people say, I know something, I shouldn't really be telling you this, but if you could keep a secret, I will share it with you, but do not mention it, do not tell it to anyone. So don't you ever feel like saying, so why are you telling it to me? A secret is a secret and should remain sacred. And Esther knew how to be silent in the palace, as we said, not to reveal her identity till the time was appropriate. Where did she get this from? From her ancestor, Rachel Imenu, our mother Rachel. Rachel who knew when to speak and when to be silent. Rachel who knew when to give the signs over to her sister Leah and when to be silent and not share that with Yaakov because she knew inside she was a prophetess, knew inside her soul, her very being, that Leah was meant to be another wife of Yaakov for all the tribes to come forth. And she knew what to share and when to be quiet. And Esther inherited that from her great ancestor, Rachel. But in honesty, we are all daughters of Rachel. What do we say? Rachel Imenu, Rachel, our mother, Mama Rachel. And what else did Rachel do? Rachel cried for the children. It says, Rachel mavaka al baneha. She cried for her children. She cried for the Jewish nation. She cried for the peace of her people, that everybody should be okay. And what did Esther do? She cried, she begged, she davened for her people. A true daughter of Rachel. So here we go on. Oh, and very interesting because we're speaking about hereditary and traits. The Kohen Gadol, the high priest, wore a breastplate, right? And on it were beautiful stones, gemstones, a different one for each one of the tribes. And they weren't just picked randomly, haphazardly, but there was a reason each stone was picked for that tribe. What was the stone of the tribe of Benjamin? And remember, Esther and Mordecai were from the tribe of Benjamin. Remember, it says Mordecai Ish Yemini from the tribe of Benjamin. What was their stone? The Yaspe. Yaspe is jasper. But Yaspe can also be divided into two words. Yesh Pe. There is a mouse. And that was the strength of the children of Rachel, of Rachel. Yesh Pe. There is a mouth. To know when to open the mouth and when to close. To know when to speak and when to remain silent. That was the strength of Rachel. That was the strength of Esther in the palace of Achashverosh. And Esther's final message to the Jewish people at the end of the Megillah was to take the days of Purim, la'asotasa, to take them and make them into Yemei Mishte, days of party, usimcha, and joy, happiness, mishloach manos, giving gifts, packages of food, each man to his friend, to his neighbor, umatanos le'evyonim, and gifts to the poor, to reach out to family, to friends, to neighbors, to community, to the poor, to the needy. To this day, we follow in Esther's request the mitzvos of Purim. We have a Purim beautiful Suda, a Purim meal to be shared with family. We do shalach manas, gifts to give to friends and neighbors. And matanas le'evyonim, it's a special time on Purim to give charity, to be community-minded, to think of the next person, to be there for others. Esther understood that the strength of the Jewish people is only if they're am echad, one united nation, one strong people. And she gave these mitzvahs that we should remain and stay one strong people. At the beginning of the Megillah, Haman says the Jewish people, they're spread apart and scattered all over the land. Esther is saying, no, we may be here, we may be there, but we're one united people. We care for one another. We're there to reach out to each other. Again, in Ukraine, how many? We are worried, we're concerned. What's with our Jewish brethren in the Ukraine? So she left us this legacy to be there for others, a legacy of Esther, a mitzvah of Purim. Thank you all for coming. One last message. They say when listening to the Megillah, we should have special, personal, heartfelt prayers. That's a most appropriate time to reach out to Hashem, so make your own personal prayer. So when the Megillah is over, don't get up right away and run out, but linger in your seat another 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and say, now I'm going to make my personal prayer for myself, my family, my neighbors, my people, a prayer for the world. And we're living in frightening times, and we all could use that prayer straight to Hashem. And Purim is a time of tefillah, a time of davening. Thank you for coming. Thank you for listening to our Zoom audience. Thank you for clicking in. And I wish everybody a Purim Sameach, a very happy Purim. All the best.